I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. In today's video, I have my end of month September wrap up for you. So I ended up reading 58 books for the month of September, and I do my wrap ups in 2 videos. So for the first half of the month, I talk about the 27 books that I read all in that video, and so I'm not going to talk about them in this one, but I will link it in the description of this video if you want to go check out those thoughts. So in this video, instead, I'm going to be chatting about the 31 books I read for the last half of the month. So the first 9 books that I'm going to talk about, I actually read these for the Twisted and Taboo readathon. So I have an entire vlog set up that I review these, so I'm not going to go into depth at all, but I will link the video in the description of this one. So first up was Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. I gave this 4 stars. This is a contemporary student-teacher taboo romance. Then Daddy Sweet Girl by Stasia Black. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This is a stepfather, stepbrother romance with the heroine. It is a novella on KU. Forbidden Obsession by Regina Wade. This is a stalker novella on KU. This was the group pick for the readathon. I gave this one 3 stars. Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. Loved it. Mafia contemporary. Gave it 5 stars. It led me down a binge for the Brutal Birthright series. So Stolen Air is book 2 and I gave this one 4 stars. Savage Lover is book 3. I gave it 3 stars. Bloody Heart is book 4. One of my favorites in the series. I gave this 5 stars. Broken Vow. This is book 5 in the series. Another favorite. I gave this one 5 stars as well. Then I started the Mind F series by St. Abby. So the first book is The Risk. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a serial killer heroine and her boyfriend who ends up being the FBI profiler trying to find her. So then once the readathon was done, I had a couple series to finish up. So the Mind F series I continued on in. The second book in the series is Sidetracked. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This one left off right where book 1 left off. I don't want to say too much because it follows the same couple for the entire series. Each book is like 100-ish pages, so it's very quick to read. This one I thought it was a little less focused on the relationship, and I wanted kind of more of that. It's still there, but we definitely see more of the hero getting pulled away for his work and different jobs. And then the heroine, we do see more of her doing her thing, which she does really well. A few things in this just came like together a little too easily and too quickly for me. Otherwise, I was still intrigued by the whole dynamic of the couple and continued on in the series. So the third book is Scarlet Angel. I gave this one 4 stars. Like I mentioned, book 2 had some duller moments for me, so I liked that in this third book that it kind of picked back up for me again. This one we get a lot more flashbacks and hints of the heroine's past. It's definitely dark. I like that the hero and his whole like FBI crew and the heroine, they end up going back to kind of where her entire kind of story started up about a decade ago. So I liked that. There were some moments in here that I was like, not sure if I like other people knowing who she is and things like that, just kind of being brought into the secret. But otherwise, the angst of it all, like how's it going to end, is definitely great. Then the fourth book is All the Lies, and I love this one. It's my favorite in the series. I gave it 5 stars. This book delivered on everything. All the dark, all the gore, all the revenge, all the action, all the angst, and just all that cat and mouse action. This one, it had me on the edge of my seat and I couldn't put it down. I was just like going through the pages on KU and couldn't wait to get to the next one. Then I read Painted All Red, which is the 5th and final book in the Mind F series, and I gave this one 4 stars. This one I still liked, but I didn't love it as much as book 4. I thought the plotting and action and the balance of the hero and heroine's relationship in book 4 was done really well. In this last book, I kind of felt like the pacing of it all was just like a little not right for me. But otherwise, it's definitely a great series. If you can handle darker, heavier content and themes like that and the gore, then it's definitely a great series to check out. Then I read Surrender by Amanda Quick. Here is the step back. Amanda Quick step backs always have great moments going on. This was the book club pick for the Rake Appreciation Society, put on from Jen from the Book Refuge and Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life. This was actually the 3rd Amanda Quick that I've read, and this was my least favorite so far. I gave it 3 stars. So there's some interesting things going on with the story, but I feel like the romance was definitely lacking for me. Basically, the heroine is 24, she's an heiress, and she doesn't want to get married, especially to a fortune hunter. And then the hero comes about, he is a new earl, and he desperately needs to marry an heiress. When they first meet, he tells her he's not interested in marriage either, even though he secretly is trying to get her in a situation where they can get married. First, they're just hanging out together and kind of going out at night. She wants to go to like scandalous places and things like that, so he takes her. He definitely does propose marriage a few times to her, and she's always like, no thanks. And then eventually they start having feelings for one another, and she decides to proposition him with a romantic liaison, and he's like, okay, like let's do this. And they have a great time. Afterwards, he wants to propose again, and she's like, oh my god, no. Of course, there's the whole like he doesn't want them to be compromised, so he proposes again. She says no. They end up getting compromised. They have to marry anyways, and then it turns into kind of like a whole little saga of she finds out that he, you know, was trying to trick her into marriage, so to speak, and so it becomes that whole thing. The last half of the story is their time together at his dilapidated estate, and it kind of just dragged for me. There is some mystery going on as well, which kind of gets brought up at weird moments of the story. So yeah, it just didn't really work for me. This one's 3 stars. Definitely not one I would recommend by this author. Then I got back to the Brutal Birthright series and finished off the series with book 6, which is Heavy Crown by Sophie Lark. This one I really liked. It's between Sebastian and Yelena. He's from the Italian mafia family, and then she is from the Russian Bratva. They first meet when Sebastian oversees her kind of getting kidnapped, or what he assumes is getting kidnapped and pushed into a car. But from her POV, we learned that it was a whole staged thing because her dad really wants to get back at his family. And so they think the perfect way is to get through him because he's the last unmarried sibling. So it's got this whole family revenge thing going on. Sebastian and Yelena end up actually falling for one another. They spend a lot of time going around Chicago together and just having tons of fun dates. But of course, the whole time you're waiting for the other shoe to drop for him to find out, what her family is really wanting her to do and using her to kind of set him and his family up. So much in this one starts happening in this book. There's a whole blood contract, there's revenge, there's her relationship with her twin brother, there's their marriage and wedding scene, which holy crap, I gasped when some things went down at their wedding. I really loved the epilogue of this one because it jumped I believe 18 years into the future. So it sets up that second generation and the Kingmakers series really well, and I can't wait to get to it. I definitely recommend the entire Brutal Birthright series. Don't be like me and put it off forever when everybody's saying they love it. It's definitely great. It was a fun binge and I had a great time with it. Next is Hidden Truths by Neva Altej. This is the third book in the Perfectly Imperfect Mafia series that she has. This one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. The heroine in this is the daughter of one of the largest Mexican cartel heads. Her father ends up getting killed at the beginning of the story, and she ends up being kind of in a house arrest situation with the person who killed her father. That person's wanting to take over all of his business contracts, take over his house, marry his daughter, and so she is panicking and wants to get out of there. She ends up being able to escape thanks to one of the workers in her house and gets away. Then she falls right into the Russian Bratva's hands. She ends up with Sergei, which is the hero of the story, and the Russian Bratva negotiator. So he knows who she is right away because he kind of dealt with her father in the past, but even though she gives him a fake name, so he's what's going on with her? I definitely need to keep her around to find out what is she hiding? What are the secrets? Why is she using a fake last name? So it becomes a little bit of a captor-captive situation. As well, he kind of has some PTSD moments or episodes from his traumatic past. He has become a hitman since he was 14, so he definitely has a lot of trauma and things going on in his mind. So he has these episodes where it kind of blacks out and just kind of rages. She's the only one who's able to reach him during that, and so his family, who is his half-brother, I believe, is the Russian Bratva boss. He ends up having her stick around because they're hey, you're the only one who can reach him. You need to stick around with him for a while we also figure out what to do with you. So this one was fun and sweet. I definitely like a tortured hero, and that's how the hero is in this one. Like I said, I gave this one 3.5 stars. Book 2 in the series is still my favorite, but I am excited to try out more from this author in the future. Then I read Lies and Lullabies by Serena Bowen. This is one of the books in the Hush Note series that she did a collab with Rebecca Yarros and Devney Perry. And since I read the other 2 books in the series, I wanted to get to this one. This is actually book 1, but they're all standalones. They just follow the same band members of Hush Note. They're all rock star romances. So this one is a rock star second chance surprise baby romance, which is all in the synopsis as well, so that is not a spoiler. This one was actually my least favorite in the series. I gave it 3 stars. This one, basically in the past, the hero had gone to Maine to kind of get away from his career, get away from the music, and just kind of take a break. And so he ended up meeting the heroine. They became friends, and then at the very end of that, they ended up giving in to their feelings and having a night together. He had never told her who he was. He gave her a fake name. She didn't know he was in a band. She didn't know he was famous. And he ends up actually leaving. So she doesn't find out until months later, even after she's already had their daughter, that he is who he is, famous and a musician and all of that, and that he gave her a fake name. So now it is 5 years later, and the hero is back in the small town in Maine, and he sees the heroine and sees their daughter, which he, of course didn't know about. This one actually was really sweet. I really liked how the hero immediately wanted to get to know his daughter more. I liked the heroine's relationship with her brother in this one. I just didn't really connect with the couple as much, and so that's why I gave this one 3 stars. Ooh, but I did listen to the audio of this one, and it was really fun because it included songs sung on there from the hero, which was a lot of fun to have the songs part of the story. Then I read Meet Me Halfway by Lillian T. James. This was actually the second book I've read from this author. In the past, I read one of her fantasy romances. So when I saw she was doing a contemporary romance, I was intrigued. I actually ended up giving this one 3.5 stars though. Basically, this is a contemporary romance with a single mom heroine and then the older grumpy hero neighbor. I really liked the beginning half of this a lot more. I was really into it at first, but then as it went on, it kind of lost the steam for me. This is a slow burn romance, which I do love slow burns, but for me to enjoy the slow burn and the steam that we get at the end, I feel like all the chemistry and the buildup and the little moments leading up to that have to be worth it. And for this, they were non-existent and they just didn't work for me. Instead of having all of this steam at the end, out of the blue, I wanted kind of more of that buildup and maybe a little bit of steamy moments along the way to build up to that. I did really like the heroine in this one. She's actually a single mom mom to her son. She has gone through a lot. Like, she was a teen mom, she was in an abusive relationship and marriage. She ended up getting divorced, and now she is just working like as many jobs as she can. She has like 3 or 4 jobs. She's doing school full-time online. She's paying the tuition for her son to go to like a fancy school. She wants him to have like all the best that he can. So one night while she's studying, after her son went to bed, she's playing music and just, you know, doing her college online, and she gets a knock at her front door. And when she goes there, there's a note on the door like saying like, hey, can you keep it down? Like, other people have to work or something like that. So she knows it's from her new grumpy next door neighbor because like nobody else is around. And then a few days pass and she is having like a conversation with one of her girlfriends, and they're just joking around and having fun. And he overhears them and kind of assumes the worst about her character. He definitely makes assumptions about her and kind of, you know, says some things to her as well. It was definitely more grumpy and rude in the beginning of the story, very judgmental and kind of making assumptions about the heroine. He also has lots of opinions about her past and like her current jobs, and I just felt like, dude, like, you shouldn't have input on any of this. So I think he leaned into that a little bit too much. Thankfully, over time, he does get a little bit better. I do wish we also got the hero's POV through some of his chapters or something like that, because otherwise we don't get a POV chapter of his until after the epilogue. And it's like a chapter we already saw from the heroine's POV, but like retold in his POV. Like I mentioned, I don't think the slow burn paid off for me with this one. Once we do get to the steamy times, it just kind of felt like out of character, out of nowhere, like that they were all of a sudden like going at it with barely any build up. So yeah, I gave us 3.5 stars. And next I got back to the Runaway series from Devney Perry. I read the first book and the first half of the month. The series is a lot of fun, and the author's note at the end, she mentions how she really enjoyed the Boxcar Children series growing up, which I loved that mystery series as well as a kid. She all of a sudden one day was like kind of inspired by the series, looking at it on her shelves, and was like, I wonder what happened to those children, like if they were adults, and like what their adventures would be. So that's how this series came to be. So it's basically 6 runaway kids who grew up in a junkyard together in California, and now they're all adults and they're all in separate places in the US, and the series kind of binds them all together with one car. In the first book, the heroine set out from Boston with a red Cadillac, and she was on her way to go find all of these long lost friends, but of course along the way things get in each of the person's way, and they end up finding their own little HEA moment instead, and so the car gets passed on to the next person to take. So that's a little explanation of the series. So Wild Highway is book 2. This was the last Devney Perry series that I needed to read to be caught up on her Devney Perry pen name backlist. This book was actually my least favorite in the series. I gave it 3 stars. This one, the heroine Gemma, she owns like a cosmetics company. She's super wealthy in Boston, and she ends up kind of, you know, not really being happy with her life. So she sells her company, gets millions of dollars, and she decides to take off, kind of find herself, jump in the car and take off from it there. So she goes to West Virginia, where her friend London, which was the heroine of book 1, ended up, and she gets the car from her and ends up trying to drive. She decides to take it to California, but along the way she takes a detour to Montana and has a little second chance romance moment instead. Gemma wants to go meet up with their other childhood friend, one of the other runaway children, and she is her friend that she left in Montana, and that is Catherine. So Gemma and Catherine went to Montana when they were like 18 or 19 after leaving California. And one day Gemma just up and left and didn't say goodbye to Catherine, didn't say goodbye to the hero, who she had a little moment with as well. And so she's kind of back to make amends and apologize to them. So Gemma is back after 11 years and she apologizes to Catherine, and they get along really well. Catherine works and is the general manager for a really fancy like resort and ranch that the hero's family owns, and he also works at. The hero is rightfully pissed at her at first because she left everybody behind. She left him, she left her friend, like she never said goodbye. And so he is definitely hurt. This book was less of the road trip, which I was actually really wanting more of. This one, the ending felt a little bit rushed for me. We kind of went from the hero and heroine having issues and like not being together to all of a sudden like, let's wrap it up, and their HEA like super fast. So I wanted a little bit more time for them. Otherwise, it's still a fun time. Just 3 stars for this one, and not my favorite in the series. Okay, the sun is shining on me right now, so just give me a minute. Okay, I'm back. Book 3 in the Runaway series is Quarter Miles, and I gave this one 5 stars. This one is a friends to lovers romance with tons of longing and pining. So we follow Catherine from Montana, and she takes over the red Cadillac and drives it to Oregon to meet up with one of their other friends, Aria. So Catherine, or Kat, has lived and worked at that ranch and resort in Montana since she was 18, so she's worked there for years, and the family there really took her in as one of them, which she loves, but she's also kind of secretly pining over her friend and roommate, which is the son of the family who owns the ranch. So he's always only looked at her as a friend, and she's kind of always wanted more from him. One day when he ends up bringing a date back to the family dinner, she's like, okay, like, why am I even here? What am I doing with my life? Why am I waiting for this dude? Like, I need to go. So she gets in the red Cadillac and decides to take off and kind of just have her own moment. But right as she's about to jump into the car and take off, the hero comes out and he's like, whoa, where are you going? Like, I'm gonna come with you. So he last minute joins her road trip, which was to get away from him, and they end up having a little road trip from Montana to Oregon together. This one gave me all of that road trip action I wanted to see in the second book. I love that they had been friends for over a decade and they've been roommates for 5 years. Like they have tons of history between one another, but they also realize on the road trip that they actually don't know a ton about one another. So it was fun seeing all that unfold on the trip. It was fun seeing him finally realize that he has more than just friendly feelings for her. The whole trip in his head, he's like, oh my god, like I can't really be having feelings for her. Like, can I? Is this real? What's going on? Does she feel it? Like, he decides that one of their rest stops to kiss her to convince himself, like, see, there's no spark here, right? Like, there's nothing here. But of course, once he kisses her, he realizes, like, oh my god, this is not good because now I want so much more. Just really love this one. All the tension and the angst and the surprises and twists along the way. Like, I didn't see some things coming. I just really had a great time with this. So 5 stars. The next was Forsaken Trail, the 4th book in the Runaway series, and I gave this one also 5 stars. This is a hate to love turned be my fake date to a wedding, turned one night stand, turned surprise pregnancy, turned move in with me while you're pregnant romance. And honestly, I loved every moment of it. There's something about the way that Devney Perry writes surprise pregnancies and like surprise baby tropes that just really work for me. It's actually the one who made me question, like, do I not like this trope or do I actually like secretly like this trope? The surprise pregnancy thing is in the synopsis of the book, so this is not a spoiler. So in this book, we follow Aria, which we met her in the previous book. She was in Oregon. So now it is her turn for the road trip and she's going to take the car from Oregon to her twin sister's house in Arizona. She uses the time to see her twin sister and then also her nephew that her sister has. But she also has to see while she's there her sister's billionaire boss and best friend that she kind of like lives with. Hero Brody and Aria have never gotten along. So he has to go to the wedding of his ex-fiance who's marrying his younger brother. So Clara convinces him to take Aria as his date or like fake date, you know, to be kind of his moral support. So to their surprise, they actually have a good time at the wedding. They end up sleeping together and all of that. Things go well. Then after their one night stand, Aria ends up going back to Oregon, and then later on is when she realizes that she's pregnant from that one night stand. I really loved Aria and Brody's energy together. They're kind of like whole hate to love vibes. I really liked how as soon as he finds out she's pregnant, he goes to her and he's like, you need to come and live with me, like come stay with me. I want to be part of my child's life, like not like how my parents were with me. So he asks her to come live with him for a year and move to Arizona because he can't leave. He's trying to take over the family business when he inherits it at his next birthday. I really liked seeing how Aria, who's used to doing things on her own, kind of has to like, you know, rely or be taken care of for once. This one was just a super fun time and 5 stars. Then I read the last book in the series, which is Dotted Lines. This is the 5th and final book in the Runaway series. And I gave this one 4 stars. I had a great time binging this whole series. Like I read these in like maybe 24 hours, but they're all super short. They're like 250-ish pages, give or take. And so they're just a fun time to binge. So this one follows Clara and her son taking off with the Cadillac from Arizona to California to find their last friend, Carson. Carson is the original owner of the Cadillac from when they all grew up in the junkyard together in California. And this ends up being the second chance romance for Clara and Carson. So this one, the first 50% of the book is told all through flashbacks, which I thought was a little too much for me. But we get to see the times when they're teens and living in the junkyard, their traumatic past, which of course all of the characters in the series have traumatic pasts because of, you know, they grew up in a junkyard like for a reason. But I kind of want to just see more of Carson and Clara in present day, which after all those flashbacks, the last half of the book, we do get to see them in present day. So it's been 12 years since they've seen each other and they kind of have this just very sweet second chance romance. I really love the epilogue of this. It kind of wrapped up the entire series and jumped 23 years into the future with kind of the whole second generation and what happens to the car after that, which was a lot of fun. This was definitely just a great series to binge and I had a great time. Then I read Plain Love by Avery Kingston. This is a novella on KU. First saw this one, Avery from Ava Reads Romance. She went to the Wanderlust signing in Texas and picked up this book. So this is a sweet, low-angst contemporary romance novella with disability rep. The hero and the heroine, they first meet on a flight and they're both going to Ireland to the same wedding, but they don't find out about that until later into the story. The hero was in the military and he suffered from an injury. So after that accident and injury, he is now a wheelchair user. He actually owns and runs his own skydiving shop and does the kind of joint or dual jumps as an instructor, which I thought was really cool. And he is headed to Ireland to be a groomsman in his battle buddy's wedding, which ends up being the heroine's brother's wedding as well. So the heroine arrives on the flight late. She's super drunk. She has a fear of flying, so she got drunk ahead of time and she ends up getting seated next to the hero. And so when she first gets on the flight, she thinks he's super rude and like a jerk because he doesn't stand up when she's trying to get into the seat next to him because he has an aisle seat. And like she doesn't realize that he actually uses a wheelchair. He doesn't tell her right away. And so then other times when she needs to get up to like use the bathroom or whatever, like she's like, you know, are you gonna get up? And he's like, no. And so every time he's about to tell her, she interrupts him or like something happens on the plane. And so he just hasn't been able to tell her. They actually end up hitting it off right away. They have a connection. And so they're both kind of like wanting more at the end of the flight. So I really loved their in-flight meet cute moment. After that, they end up going their separate ways and they meet again at the wedding when they realize that they're both in the same wedding. He's a little wary about her reaction to to learning that he has a wheelchair. Love how she proved him wrong about that. There is some drama in here with her brother, which I thought was definitely over the top. But otherwise, this was a sweet, cute little romance, and 3 stars for this one. Next, I read The It Girl by Ruth Ware. I ended up not liking this one, and I gave it 2 stars. This was, I believe, like my 5th or 6th read from this author. This was definitely my least favorite of hers. This was basically follows 2 friends at college. One of them is the It Girl. She's the one who ends up murdered. And then the other one is her friend and roommate, and she's kind of like pinned the murder on somebody else who's like in prison. But then we find out like he's not the person who did it. And so it's a whole like past and present flashbacks of the girls and like what really happened. This was just way too repetitive for me. Took forever to get to the point. Like I stopped caring about halfway through. So yeah, 2 stars for this one. And I read an arc of The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. This actually doesn't come out until April 4th of 2023. This was my first read from this author. I picked this up because I was in a thriller mood and it did keep my attention. I will say it is less a thriller though and more kind of just domestic suspense. So it centers around 2 women and their marriages to their husbands. It also has a little bit of a was it a murder, was it a suicide situation as well. And this one of the characters we follow is Pippa and her husband and their 2 daughters have recently moved to a small little coastal town in Australia. They bought this like gorgeous cliffside home. But after living there for a bit, they realize that their home is right on the edge of this huge cliff, and the cliff is known as the Drop, where a ton of people commit suicides a year. So in the past year of them living there, Pippa has had to call the police and emergency services like 7 times to try to stop people from jumping. Her husband actually goes out and talks to people as well and talks them off of the cliff. He was like even featured in a newspaper article about being the man who saves people from the drop. So the story starts out with one night Pippa is in their house and she sees a woman out there on the cliff. Her husband goes out there to do his saving thing and Pippa, looks away. She's dealing with the kids. Her sister's at her house too. And when she looks back to see what's going on with her husband and the woman is gone and her husband has his arms kind of like pushed out. And she's like, what did I just see? Like, what happened? Why did that lady jump? Like, did she jump? Did he push him? Like, what am I looking at? What am I seeing? It gets even more complicated when Pippa realizes that it was the wife of her husband's boss who fired him is the lady who jumped, and like that they knew this family. We get both past and present lives of Pippa and Amanda, the woman who fell off of the cliff, which we even get to see Amanda like in the afterlife, which was interesting to see how that POV worked out. There's lots of lies and struggles and kind of just the whole good and bad of marriage, lots of secrets and domestic disputes, raising children, mental illnesses, work stresses, and how long women are willing to try or look over things for the sake of being in love with their husbands. The characters in this one was hard to get into or root for because they weren't very likable. On a psychological level, they were super interesting to watch. Yeah, this was a quick read. I think it was like around 340-ish pages. It comes out April 4th, and I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Broken Bonds by Jay Bree. This is the first book in the Bonds That Tie series, which is a reverse harem paranormal romance series. There's a read-along for this going on from Jess from Peace Love Books, Tori from Novel Life, Sam from Sam Reads a Little, Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl, and McKay from Oh Hey It's McKay. So I decided to give this a try. This one has kind of been on my radar. It wasn't really on my TBR, but I decided to try it out since they were doing the read-along. And this one I kind of was like conflicted on. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I was intrigued by the characters, but I definitely wanted more from the rest of the story. There's like 0 world building. All we know is that the heroine has these like bonded that I guess are like kind of fated mates. There's gifts talked about. There's a resistance talked about. The heroine has been on the run for like 5 years when the story starts. But like we don't get much else from this series. So like I wanted more of the world. We don't get a lot of the world at all. Like I don't even know, is this urban fantasy? Is this like a fantasy? Like what's going on? Nothing's ever described. Like there's no descriptions of the heroes. Like if there weren't covers for the books, I wouldn't even know what they looked like. We don't even find out their ages until book 3. Also just a lot of drama in this one with like the whole like girl on girl hate going on at the school that the heroine goes to because she ends up going to this like college situation. Really annoying too, all the like other woman drama with the heroes because since they haven't bonded yet, like they're off doing their, hero thing with other ladies, and those other ladies are mentioned a ton, and they felt very like YA, the jealousy level of things. I thought there were some nice moments in here and a little bit of caretaking scenes with a couple of her heroes. As I already knew going in, it was a slow burn series, so I wasn't expecting much at all. There's no steam in this first book. There's like a non-con situation going on with one of her heroes. The heroes are definitely like toxic and have all those vibes going on. So I was intrigued, and I did get all of the first 3 books from the Audible sale, so I was like, I'm gonna read those at least and see how it goes. So yeah, this first one was the best in the series for me, and I gave it 3.5 stars. After that, I jumped into Savage Bonds, the second book in the series. This one I gave 3 stars. Again, I had the same issues, like there's no world building, there's no describing of anything going on. So yeah, 3 stars for this one. The third book is Blood Bonds, which I gave this one 2 stars. So then, like I mentioned, I had the audio of the third book, so I jumped into it, and this was going to be like my make or break moment, this third book in the series, which is Blood Bonds. I'm definitely out on this series and not going to be continuing. The series only went downhill for me. I honestly don't get the hype for this series. It felt like the same thing over and over again. I was intrigued by the characters in the first book, but as we went on, I just lost my interest in any of them. I do think if you are a fan of some of those like TikTok hyped fantasy series or like Guild, the whole like Plated Prisoner series, you'll probably like this one. I did not like that, so I don't like this either. So I read An Arc of a Wicked Game by Kate Bateman. This is the third book in her Ruthless Rivals series. I've loved this entire series and it's a lot of fun. It follows the Davies and Montgomery family, and they've had like a rival situation for centuries. Each book has been a couple from each side of the family like meeting up. So this one is between Harriet Montgomery and Morgan Davies, and they've always had this like animosity, or like they've bet and teased one another growing up, but like they both secretly have wanted and pined for one another. So when he's about to set off to a war, she decides she wants him to come back safely, but of course she can't tell him that. So instead she's like, hey, let's make a bet, because they always make bets together. So she says if he comes back from war alive, she'll give him 3 kisses. Morgan heads off to war. He's gone for 2 years, 6 months of which he was actually imprisoned. So he comes back set on revenge for the person who like was involved with him being imprisoned. And then also he had the realization while he was gone that he wants Harriet in his life. So he's ready to come back and seduce her. This one was a lot of fun. I loved their banter and whole like lifelong teasing one another. You definitely just feel and see all the history between the characters. We get to see the characters from all the previous books because his siblings were the hero and heroine of a book, and then her cousins were the hero and heroine of the book as well. There's a little bit of a mystery, suspense, intrigue going on in this one that I wasn't as much of a fan of. I did love that the heroine is a cartographer. I thought that was super cool, seeing her make her maps and wanting to go on adventures to see all these places she's always mapped out. I did have a great time with this one though, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and it comes out on December 27th. Then I read An Arc of The Duke Gets Even by Joanna Shoup. This is the 4th book in her Fifth Avenue Rebels series, and this one comes out on January 24th, 2023. This one I gave 4 stars to. This is a book that's been being led up to the entire series between Nellie and the Duke of Lockwood. Duke has been passed up by so many women throughout the books. All of Nellie's friends were supposed to like court him or be engaged to him throughout the series, and they all left him for other guys. Basically, the Duke is in desperate need of an heiress, and that's why he's in America trying to find a bride. At the very beginning of the story, we flash back to the very first book in the series at one of the house parties of the heroine of that book. And that is when Nellie and the Duke first meet. She's swimming naked at midnight out in the ocean, and she mistakenly thinks he is somebody she's there to like have a midnight tryst with. First, she doesn't realize who he is and kind of jumps on his back and whatever. And then they both realize who they are, but they kind of hit it off and have a little moment in the ocean together. They kind of kiss and make plans to meet up again another night, and they go their separate ways. Then the next day is when Nellie sees the Duke at the party of her friend and realizes like, you're supposed to be courting my friend. Like, what's going on here? Like, I can't be involved in this. We jump over the next 3 books of the series, and so now we're at present day for them when they meet again. He is still searching for an heiress to marry, and Nellie's kind of feeling a bit adrift herself. She doesn't really have any life things going on. She doesn't have any passions. All of her friends are coupling up, and she's just kind of feeling alone. She does feel a little something for the Duke of Lockwood whenever he's around. She kind of tries to stay away from him and is like, hey, you're supposed to be finding like a respectable, society's darling type of future duchess. Like, you do not want to get mixed up with me. Like, I'm a rebel. I do what I want. But they're both like intrigued by one another and end up giving in and having like this scandalous affair. So I loved how Lockwood knows Nellie is perfect just as she is, like from the start, and he doesn't want to change her at all. And she is the one who is more pushing him away. I loved how rebellious Nellie is and just kind of like, I'm not going to live by, society's rules. I do what I want. I liked her relationship with her father. I liked seeing her relationship with her cousin and her aunt in Hell's Kitchen. She does end up finding a cause that she's passionate about, which she ends up helping other women like with contraceptives and getting access to them and teaching them how to use it and things like that. The whole history and conversations going on in this about, women's reproductive rights and the knowledge of all of that, and kind of like, with today's current day like situation going on, was definitely right on the nose. I did like seeing the Duke of Lockwood unwind and kind of his possessive side coming out for some moments in this. There's definitely a lot of passion and steam between the two, but I feel like I wanted more from this story because book 2 and 3 I thought were really, really strong for story and romance, and this one was kind of more on the steamy side instead of having a story or plot to go along with it for what I wanted from the read. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. Still a great series, still a great book. I love Joanna Shoup, so everything she writes I'm going to read. This one's out on January 24th. Then I read Devil of Dublin by B.B. Easton, and this is one of my new favorite reads. Gave this one 4.5 stars. This was actually my first time reading anything from this author, and I'm definitely intrigued now. This is a dark contemporary romance with two broken souls, kind of a whole forbidden love situation, a broken hero who ends up growing up and turning into a hitman for the Irish mob / mafia, and we have a gorgeous setting in Ireland. So a friend of mine actually reached out to me on Instagram when she read an arc of this one and was like, is this book on your radar? Because it should be. Like, holy crap, it was amazing. She compared it to The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne, which is one of my absolute favorite books in series. She said it has that same like childhood fated mates vibe, like you should definitely read it. So I was sold from there, and it definitely delivers on that. So basically the heroine Darby comes to Ireland for the first time with her mother when she's 8 years old. They're there for like her grandmother's funeral. They stay at her grandfather's house, and while they're there, Darby is just like, you know, she just loves the like nature and the stories about the fairies and just everything, you know, all the Irish folklore. She goes out into the woods to go find a fairy, and she ends up coming across this cottage where she sees the hero, who was like a little boy at the time. He's 10. She later learns that his name is Kellen, but at the time he doesn't speak. He's kind of more like wild and rabid, like he growls at her. He's definitely like being abused and all of that going on. So there are definitely content warnings for this book. Instead of being afraid of him, Darby immediately takes a liking to him. She actually thinks he's one of the fairies that she's been told about, and she ends up giving him like a biscuit or a snack. They end up hitting it off. Like, even though he doesn't speak to her, she just keeps coming back and, you know, trying to be his friend. And so over the course of a couple more years, Darby keeps coming back every summer with her mother up until she's 12. She meets Kellen again, and over time they become close. But then after the summer that Darby was 12, she ends up not coming back for years because of some things going on in her family life. I loved this book right from the start. I love that entire like childhood fated mates, soulmates vibe. I was like 13% into it and paused the audio and went to go buy the paperback because I was like, I'm gonna need this book. I love it so much. Later on, once they meet again, once they're adults, they've both been through traumatic things at that point in their life, and there are definitely rough times ahead for them. But I love seeing characters come through so much trauma and get their HEAs. Right when they come back again together as adults, he ends up coming to her rescue. Like, page 1 of them meeting again as adults is him protecting her and doing some things, and they end up on the run together, and he is like, I'm ready to burn the world down, burn down the mob, like leave all this behind, like I just want you. Audio for this one I definitely recommend because you get the hero's Irish accent, which was amazing. I loved all the folklore just weaved through the story, and at the author's note as well, the author mentions how some of the parts of the story was loosely based on some of her like family secrets and stuff growing up, so that was interesting. I will say the last half of the book I wasn't super invested in. Some of the action there kind of lost me. I wanted more of the focus on the romance and the relationship, but otherwise it was a great time. So 4.5 stars for this. Like I mentioned, there are content warnings for this. So there's content warning for sexual assault, which is on-page attempted rape. There's domestic abuse, verbal abuse, tons of violence. There is child abuse, on-page physical abuse, and then off-page sexual child abuse mentioned as well. So those are all the 31 books I read for the last half of September. Like I mentioned earlier, I do have my wrap-up for the first half of the month for the 27 books I read earlier in September, linked in the description of this video if you want to watch that one. Or you can always check out my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description as well. I have reviews for all of the books that I talk about in this video. So September was a great month. I'm already looking forward to October as well. Let me know in the comments what your favorite read for September was, or if you read any of the books that I mentioned, let me know that as well. Or if you're going to pick any of the ones I talked about up, let me know that too, because I'd love to hear. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.